guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's super easy, no fail sourdough bread recipe. Now I am so excited to share this with you clearly because this is potentially going to change your life. Like all of you that have wanted to get into sourdough but have felt like it's way too hard, or maybe you have already gotten into sourdough and you've done it once and you felt like it's way too hard, not maintainable, all of that jazz. This recipe is going to just totally change your life. Now before we hop right in, a few things. First off, I got this recipe originally from my sister-in-law, Marlene, so shout out to you, Marlene. She had shared it with me a couple of months ago because she was like, look, now that you're getting back into the sourdough game, you have to try this one because we haven't bought bread in over a year since I've started making this recipe. And that was and is our goal. We don't want to be buying bread from the grocery store like ever anymore. Not that we'll say no if we see a really great loaf sometime. But in general, not only because of money, it's cheaper to make your own bread, but more importantly for me on top of that, you know exactly what's going into your bread. And with sourdough, you're obviously getting those fermented grains. So they're already partially digested, which I've had a lot of you guys ask me what the benefits of sourdough are. That's kind of part of it to explain it, is that the grains are already kind of partially digested through the fermentation process. So in theory, it makes it easier for your body to break down the gluten, break down the bread. And there's actually a lot of people I know that are very sensitive to gluten or can't eat it, but they can eat proper sourdough. Now, proper sourdough is literally just wheat, water, and salt. If you ever see anything else added into it, like if you're buying it from the store or something, which our goal is to not buy it from the store, but you see that, then it's not real sourdough. Because real sourdough, like I said, is just those three ingredients. And the reason it's able to be those three ingredients is because the starter is also just wheat and flour, and then you're capturing bacteria and making a starter, which by the way, I do have a video coming out very soon explaining what a starter is. I am not a sourdough expert, guys. I have to say that as well at the top of the video. Like for real, I'm not. Dan and I used to make sourdough back when we lived in Nashville, but he was really like spearheading that more than me. And now that we've moved here and we've picked it back up, Dan still does it with me from time to time, but I'm really the one that has been spearheading the sourdough. What was really amazing for me when my sister-in-law gave me this recipe was just seeing, like I said, how literally foolproof it is. As long as your starter is good to go, you will be good to go with this bread. And I have to say this as well, it's a very flexible recipe. So I have messed with the ratios and the cook time and the fermentation time multiple times. I don't know if it's even ever been exactly the same any of the times, like the temperature in the room changes, where I put the bowl changes, and it has worked out every time. So side note that's not a side note, pretty much anytime you're cooking something, commit to the end, even if you think it's ruined, because so often you'll be surprised, like it's not ruined, or you learn something. It's like, don't give up early. And so that's how I feel about this bread. There were multiple times where I was like, and I even posted about it on Instagram, like it's done, I ruined it, and I didn't ruin it. So it's really a very flexible recipe, very foolproof in general. And I have to say this as well, Marlene originally got her recipe off of the King Arthur website, and she's altered it a little bit. Like I said, I alter it, just kind of mess with it time to time. And I'll tell you as we go, like my starter, for example, I put anywhere from 60 to 90 grams of starter in the bread each time I'm doing it. Just depends. That's one other thing I have to say. This recipe is going to be done by weight. It's very important to have a scale. And I realize that when you're digging into sourdough, that feels overwhelming. Like you can make sourdough without a scale, but I'm telling you, scales are affordable. It's not overwhelming once you do it. Like if I can do it, you can do it. And scales really help you achieve a consistent result in your baking. And like I said, it's really easy. My sister-in-law has told me before that she can have a loaf of bread ready within the same day by doing this. I actually don't know what she's talking about. I've never asked her. I start the recipe the night before. So I do my concoction the night before. So really, if you're backing up, it starts the day before, because I tend to feed my starter in the first part of the day, anywhere from the morning through lunchtime-ish. Once again, we can be flexible. And then my starter has time to really get bubbly and active. And then at night before I go to bed, that is when I make my bread. Like I do my mixture of everything that's going to rise. And I think essentially they call it like a bulk fermentation. It sits there in the bowl and it rises and ferments overnight. And then in the morning when I wake up, that's when I finish making my bread. So I have bread ready for that day. And so I really can't explain to you how much easier of a process this is than like the artisan loaves. And I'm telling you, it's so tasty. This bread is so good. And the other cool thing is it's in a loaf pan. So it's also much easier to use. I feel like especially as a mom for making like sandwiches, and even just cutting it in general, having it in that loaf pan shape is much easier. So with all of that being said, let's hop right in. All right, so you start off by adding 500 grams of organic, all-purpose, unbleached flour. Then I added in 120 grams of whole wheat flour, or you can just add another 120 grams of regular flour. Then I put in about 1 3/4 teaspoons of salt, and then I stirred all my flours and my salt together. Then I added 450 grams of water. You could pre-measure the water, but I have a pretty good idea of what 450 grams is, so I felt fine just pouring it directly in. Then I add in about 60 grams of starter. Like I said, I've added all the way up to 90 grams before, and it's worked and been good. So you have flexibility. Then I did an initial mix up just with my wood spoon. I stirred everything together. I did recently purchase a dough hook, and I like mixing with that as well, just because it does a really good job of getting in there and pulling out all of the flour from little like crevices in the bowl. Just really mixes it up well. Although I have to be honest, lately, most of the time, Dan actually mixes the bread for me. So I'll like measure everything and get it in a bowl, and then he will do the actual mixing. But you really don't need to mix this dough together super well. You can leave it just pretty sloppy and just like well combined. Then you want to cover up your bread. I have done this with a wet tea towel, and that works as well, but I do like covering it in this wrap too because it really helps the bread rise well. So like I mentioned, I make this at night before bed, and then in the morning, as you can see, my mixture has totally risen. We have really great looking bubbles in the bowl. And then I preheated my oven to 400 degrees. And then while that was heating up, I put a little bit of olive oil in my bread loaf and spread that all around the crevasses. And then I took my dough scraper and I scraped all of my dough into the bread loaf pan. I really love this dough scraper. I highly recommend it. It really helps you get all of the last bits of dough that you need. And honestly, it's helpful with a lot of baking in general. And then I pretty much just spread my dough evenly across the pan, and then I covered it back up again and I let it rise while my oven was heating. Now you want it to rise, this is its second rise, all the way at least to the top line basically of the bread loaf. It can go a little bit above that, but my sister-in-law said that she's actually had the dough spill over, so you don't want it to go too high. You can also see bubbles popping out of this, and I love it. And once my oven had heated up to 400 degrees and my bread loaf dough had risen, which usually takes anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the temperature of your room, you can put it in the oven to bake for approximately 40 to 45 minutes. By the way, everyone ignore my hair towel. I was wearing both last night, and in this shot, I was messing with a hair oil that ended up leaving my hair really greasy. So I had to wash it 2 days back to back. Anyways, once you remove your bread from the oven, you can just pop it out of the pan. I like to put my bread on a cooling rack to just really cool and air out. And once your bread is fully cooled off, you can slice it. Now, this is something that Dan is better at than me, slicing even slices, and we do like to pre-slice. So he pre-slices our entire loaf, and then, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we always bag it up and put the bag in the freezer. So yeah, guys, that is it. I really do want to hit home the point of putting your sourdough in the freezer, it really makes your bread last longer. It comes out of the freezer incredibly well, like it tastes really great. I do the same thing with all of my sourdough bagels. They just come out of the freezer and they go straight into the toaster. So you don't even have to let it thaw. It just goes straight in. And the cool thing is, now granted, this is why I want to eventually grind my own wheat, because apparently you start losing nutrition like right after the loaf is broken. Apparently you start losing nutrition right after the wheat berries are ground. So it all just kind of starts aging. So that's the other reason I like to throw my sourdough bread in the freezer, is just to like pause the aging process on the bread. But then also if I take longer to eat it, it doesn't matter because it's safe in my freezer. I really hope that this video was helpful to you guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. And like I said, a sourdough starter video will be coming up soon. And feel free to let me know in the comments down below, because I am not a pro baker. A, if you have any tips, if there's anything you want to just like throw into the mix. B, if you have any requests. C, if you have any suggestions for other sourdough recipes that I should try out. And most importantly, you have to let me know if and when you try to make this bread recipe. And I just hope that you love it as much as I do. That is it for this video. I will, God willing, see you guys back here soon with another one. And that's it. All right. Bye, guys.